And all of a sudden, we have, for the first time in our lifetime, we have a common experience. The globe does. Rich, poor, black, white, everyone in between. Doesn't matter where you end up on the political spectrum, what language you speak. We all have a common hurt and a common loss and a common suffering that we can unite under.
Merry Christmas and happy almost New Year's. This is David Sams, and you're listening to CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, the podcast from the producers of Keep the Faith. Today I have with us somebody very special for Christmas time because he and his brother have just put out a Christmas album that you've got to absolutely get or stream because it is absolutely mind-boggling. He's going to talk to you about that. It's called A Drummer Boy Christmas. And it's been some 12 years in the making, and it's out now. Did I mention that they've done 1 billion streams? I mean, that's crazy. 1 billion streams of their music. That is absolutely nuts. The group is For King and Country, and I'm talking about the Smallbone brothers, Joel and Luke. And we have Joel here today. He's going to share some amazing stories with us. He's going to talk about what their 2020 has been like, how they made some changes, and how they took advantage of absolutely every opportunity. I mean, these guys have not let up in 2020. They did not let the pandemic get them down. And they've had amazing success at radio this year. You know, they've had multiple number one hits with their music over the past few years, but this year has been absolutely off the charts. And of course, last year they did that amazing song with Dolly Parton, God Only Knows was the name of the song. And a great video too, by the way. And thank you, Dolly. Thank you for stepping forward, putting your faith out there. You've been doing this quite often here in the last year and a half, you know, really putting your faith out there. And I really appreciate it. And I know a lot of folks that are listening right now feel the same way. You're one of a kind. But getting back to Joel Smallbone, he's going to inspire you. He's going to lift you up, and he's going to give you some really hope for the new year. So I want to get right to the interview that I recently did with Joel Smallbone, and he, of course, is half of the duo from the group For King and Country. Let's get to it. So how's the billion streaming man?
You know, David, that's actually what I've started referring to myself as, and I've asked people to refer to me as that. So I'm glad you got the memo. I'm the billion stream man.
Yeah, it sort of it works. You know, it's a good way to talk about. Oh my gosh, not only the amount of success, but the impact that you all are having, and it just seems like you have one just not only hit after another, but impactful story song, one right after the other.
Man, I appreciate you saying that. It's a team effort, as you well know, and this year more than ever with songs like Together, just straight up, and we can chat more about it, but it's like the grace of God, you know. There's certain things you can claim of like, well, we thought through this, or we had this happen the way we wanted to, and then there are other things you're like, I just couldn't have planned it that way. So, well,
let's talk about that. Let's talk about the year that you all have had, not only with your music, but personally, because we've all dealt with a lot of talking about shock and awe. This has been the year of shock and awe, and yeah. How have you all been dealing with it?
Well, it depends on if you go to a micro level or a macro level, right? I mean, the macro is the global citizen and, you know, real worry for the developing world, particularly with this pandemic. You got worry for the arts community, film and music and so on. Even worry for, I just became a citizen for our nation. And so those things that's very real, and that's a part of the equation. On a very micro level, just the band, family, so far we've been very fortunate. In fact, so fortunate to the point that I feel a little bit of that survivor's remorse in that so many have had such really terrible economic, relational, or loss of life, and we've been, I've had, on the contrary, more time with my wife at home than I've had since we were married, which has been beautiful. And we've gotten to go in and work on a Christmas album that otherwise would have been very hard to make this year. But because of the time we've had, we really were able to sink our teeth into it, and we're very proud of it. And we've gotten to even do these drive-in shows. I'm sitting at one today that we're prepping for, that a lot of people haven't been able to even do shows. And so you got to put it all into the equation, right? It's all part of the layers of this thing. So it's a little conflicted, but I feel coming out of it, as whatever that looks like over the next, few months or a year, all of us in the arts, particularly those of us, and I'd raise my hand, that have been fortunate enough to not be as directly affected as some, really have an opportunity and even maybe an obligation to write about what it looks like to be part of the healing on the other side of this thing,
Let's talk about your Christmas album, because Drummer Boy Christmas, I can't think of a year in which we need something like this. This is the year to put this project out, isn't it?
Well, that goes back to my comment just about God's kindness and graciousness, even in all this, in that Christmas has sort of followed us around our whole career. Like we started out in 2012 and we just decided, well, we were just going to do a Christmas tour. We didn't have a single, David. We had no EP. We had no music out. We shoved ourselves into a warehouse and came up with these Christmas renditions of classic songs. And one of them was Drummer Boy. And from that day to this, it's just sort of been this, it's just been this really wonderful moment for us. But we've never done it a full-length album. We've never done the due diligence. So we sort of had it in the back of our mind that maybe 2020 would be the time to do this. And then when everything started happening this year, it was pretty emphatic that this is the time. And it was interesting too, because, for a moment we had on the table the more sort of light-hearted versions of, Frosty the Snowman or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And they quickly got slid off the table, and we found that the greatest contribution to such a tough year would be to put together basically the incredible hope that humanity has because of God's intervention 2,000 years ago, and that it still stands today, and that we should absolutely, more than ever in our lifetime, we should celebrate it in 2020. And so Drummer Boy Christmas has really become this story of Jesus' birth, and in turn, sort of like that Drummer Boy, what do we have to offer in return? And even if it's not much, that's okay,
Well, we've been through so much, especially here, across the country, but especially here in Nashville, beginning with the tornado that wiped out a lot of folks and a lot of homes, a lot of businesses. And we went to the pandemic, 3 or 4 days later, I think. And then the civil unrest. I mean, this has just been a nonstop year of havoc.
And then the political, it falling on a political year. I mean, it just keeps going. Yeah.
I wasn't even going to mention that.
No, it's there. It's real. This will be my first. I'm a new citizen, so this has been my first election ever to vote.
Yeah,
presidential election.
Well, good luck with that one.
Thank you.
What a year to become a citizen, huh? I mean, you really picked it.
Well, I do feel a sense of, it was always funny, David. This is a bit of a tangent, but I still have this kind of wonky sideways Australian accent. But this bit sort of speaking in Nashville in the South, it's sort of got the remnants of the South sort of laced into it. And so you always felt a little homeless because you're like, well, I'm not really an American citizen. I'm still got my Australian passport, but but I have this accent, and so you feel like a nomad. And there was something about crossing that line to citizenship. It was like, no, I'm here, and I'm proud to be here. And America's been very kind to us, and I want to give back, and I want to do everything I can to encourage and impact and lift this country up through our music.
Well, I mean, if you look over this past year, you've had the top song out there, Together. You did the song with Dolly earlier. That was a lot of fun and really amazing, a breakthrough at the time. And you've done the song with Kirk Franklin, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that, because that particular song really played into these times in which we live, and it was sort of I don't know if it was a cry or an anthem. How would you define that song? That was the Unity song.
Yeah, Together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, once again, I love you asking these questions, because I can keep just putting it back on a sense of beauty and providence. Now, I should say providence, like there's with the Christmas music, we've always stayed with it every step of the way. And then this kind of moment happens where you're like, now is the time. And the same thing happened with Together, the song. We had written it actually a year or two prior to all of this. And there was something about it that stuck with me. It was like, there is this song has a time. I thought maybe it was just for the elections at that point. I was like, we got this thing coming up. I'm a citizen now. Maybe that's part of it. And then I remember we very, I don't know if you want to say poetically or unpoetically, but we booked our first cross-country Canadian tour in the history of the band, starting on March 10th of this year. So we had 12 or 14 shows lined up coast to coast. And obviously the pandemic really gripped the Western world on the 12th or 13th. And so we got 2 shows in to 12 or 20, whatever it was. And we'd started playing an unreleased version of Together live. And I remember Luke walking off stage and going, hey, now's the time. Now's the time for that song. And I completely agreed. And back up to January, we were at the Grammy Awards. We'd been nominated for 2 awards, as had Kirk Franklin. And both of us were fortunate to win both awards. And our categories were sandwiched in between each other. And so as we were walking on, he was walking off, and vice versa. And so we were the first ones to greet each other as a result and celebrate. And 4 days later, I called him and I said, hey, we've got this song together. Would you be involved? And he, very enthusiastic, said, not only that, I'll bring my choir and band. And he wrote a whole section to the song, which is my favorite part of the whole song. And then we did the Canada run, and then the pandemic hit, and then we're like, we've got to get this song out. And we'd always felt that we just had this gnawing that it needed a strong female voice as well. And Mariah and I, my wife and I, are close with Tori Kelly and her husband Andre. And so we sent her in the middle of quarantine, sent her a video message and just said, and an MP3. And Mariah had done the kind of scratch vocal for her. And we said, hey, would you consider singing on this? We really feel like it's important. And it was one of those rare moments, David, where all of the, the business side of this whole thing can be very taxing, but this was just all creativity and all heart. And she, within 3 days, she tracked it in her home studio, sent her vocal back. And then, a lot of this social unrest and George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor, a lot of that hit. And not only was it just this pandemic song, it became this, you got 2 Caucasian Australian guys and a Hispanic woman and an African-American man with Kirk singing a song about togetherness in the midst of all this. And that's kind of the moment where you just go, you know what, it's beautiful to sign up and just watch this, obviously a lot of hard things going on, but to watch this song find its footing and impact each other in such a special way because of it was very special to be a part of.
That hit just at the right time. And with everything that's going on in the country right now, in the world right now, let's not leave out the rest of the world. This is a time that we need God more than ever. It just seems like in many, many ways, we keep running into roadblocks. I mean, our churches, for the most part, are closed. Concerts are non-existent for the most part, except for drive-ins and things like that. And if you look at a lot of ministries, a lot of folks, they were given for the first 5-6 months, through their tithing online, but a lot of people are now finding themselves very distant from their churches. And we're entering a whole new kind of era that we've not in my lifetime. I haven't experienced anything like it. What would be your hope, your prayer going forward? How can we get back to God in 2021?
That's a good question. I may very well just be the cup half full guy in the room. But in my experience, and even looking back at, you want to take the early church as an example, not only were they just unable to meet and they didn't have, Zoom and online services, but if they did meet, they were, burned at the stake or literally fed to the lions or the massive persecution. And theologians would rightfully so argue that if it weren't for the early persecution of the church, that Christianity wouldn't have spread and taken the hold of the world the way it did. And I mention that to say something really awful, like loss of life, persecution, very tragic, can actually be used for some incredible good. And I feel like, and I'm only speaking for myself, so I'll raise my hand and say I'm guilty here, but I felt February or even March 11th of this year, I was looking back, very kind of good with it all. Like, you had your church, you had your people, you had your sort of comfort and doing the shows, and you didn't really appreciate much of any of it. And you just sort of went along with it. And all of a sudden we've had it all taken away. The arts community have taken away. Christians have had it taken away. The world has had it taken away. And I believe that all of a sudden we have to fight for something again. We have to fight for unity. We have to fight for togetherness. We have to fight for church and kind of rise above this time and recognize the importance of it. And so I think there's going to be, I believe in 2021, it's going to be a slow burn, no doubt, but there's going to be a recognition, and there already is, that this stuff is beautiful and monumental. I mean, the stories I've heard, myself included, of people going back to a church service again, even socially distanced, and just weeping because they'd forgotten how important and beautiful it was to gather together. I think the same thing's going to happen with shows. And all of a sudden, we have, for the first time in our lifetime, like you mentioned, we have a common experience. The globe does. Rich, poor, black, white, everyone in between. Doesn't matter where you end up on the political spectrum, what language you speak. We all have a common hurt and a common loss and a common suffering that we can unite under. And I believe, as a Jesus lover, and a Jesus follower, that there will be a great rise after this, a very authentic community that maybe we haven't seen in our lifetime as well. Again, maybe very well I'm just rose-colored glasses, but that's what I hope. That's what I see, at least.
Well, Joel, thank you for your words of encouragement, and thank you for helping us to keep the faith and give our best to your brother Luke. And man, I'll just be praying for you all, and just keep the love and the encouragement out there for all of us, because your music definitely brings it to us.
Thank you, David, and my best to your team and family as well, and a merry early Christmas.
And thank you, Joel. A Drummer Boy Christmas is now available wherever you get your music, and of course you can also stream it online. And thank you so much, boy. As I mentioned before, it's an honor to have a guy in here who is, he's had, that group, they've had something like 6 Grammy nominations. They've had 4 wins. I have no idea how many Dove Awards they've won. And I know that they've been Artists of the Year. They've had something like a dozen top radio singles, and I think 7 number ones. And they've had Billboard Music Award nominations, including 1 win. I could keep going on and on and on. These guys are just amazing. So make sure that you check them out. Of course, you can find them online. You can stream them. You'll be part of the 1 billion+ streams. And if you have a friend right now that really needs music of encouragement or hope or inspiration, please do share this group with them, because that's the way that people find out about these artists. That and contemporary Christian radio. I mean, that's about it. There's not a lot of other ways to get exposure and to get the music into new hands, other than Christian radio and podcasts like this and a few others. And we really appreciate you, because you're the one that puts this music into the hands of folks who need it most. And speaking of sharing, I have to ask you to also share our podcast, because that's the only way people find out about Contagious Influencers of America, is by your sharing it. So please do share this podcast with a friend. And if you get a chance, go to your favorite podcast app and please do rate and review us. That really helps people. It encourages people when they see those great reviews and those high ratings to give us a shot. And once they do, they usually stick with us. And if you want to see all of our episodes that we've done over the last couple of years, just go to contagiousInfluencers.com, and they're all right there. You can play them from there, or at least you'll know what you're looking for when you go to your favorite podcast app. And if you want to hear a great radio show, check out our sister radio show. It's called Keep the Faith. It airs all over the country on some 300 stations across America. And if you don't get it in your market, you can check out some of our really great episodes at KeepTheFaith.com. I'm David Sams, and you've been listening to CIA Contagious Influencers of America, the podcast from the producers of Keep the Faith. We'll be back, next week with another great episode. And I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. And I hope you're staying safe. And I hope you're keeping the faith. And remember, go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living in black and white. We'll see you next time.